Good evening, everyone. It's Mark Wilkinson here, live from London. Welcome along to Live Remixed Book Club. Every Tuesday evening here in London, it's 7:30 p.m. Every Tuesday here in London, we get together with a few friends and we talk about Life Remixed, Looking Beyond the Dance to Face the Music, obviously my debut book that's out right now on Amazon. So we all get together and we have a chat. So I've got various different people that are going to join me over the 14 weeks of the 14 chapters. It's going to be fascinating. Some people will be on more than once. Other people might just come in once because they want to talk about a particular chapter. But tonight's going to be really great. I've got my own cast of the In-Betweeners with me, which is going to be wonderful. Obviously, I'm Will, from the In-Betweeners. Those of you who have read Life Remix will understand exactly what I'm talking about. But we'll cover a bit more of that as we go. But what I would say is that chapter 2 is called Good Times. Because there were good times. Of course there were. I wouldn't be writing the book if it wasn't for good times and music and happiness and joy and all that kind of stuff. But intertwined with lots of anxiety and issues and things that had to be overcome in order to grow into someone that I'm comfortable to be today, of course. So without further ado, as I said, Life Remixed, Chapter 2. This is the book club. I'd like to introduce you to a few of my guests. So let's bring them in one by one. Here's Matt. Hello, Matt.
Evening, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, mate. How are you?
Good, I'm well. I'm really good, thank you.
Brilliant. Let's bring in the rest of the guys. Here's Wayne. Hello, Wayne. How are you?
Hello, Mark. Good evening. Good evening, Matt. Good evening, Mark.
Hello, Wayne.
Everything good?
Yep.
Excellent. Good. And let's bring in Gary. Here's Gary. Hi, Gary.
Hi, how you doing, all?
Yes, good, mate. Really good. I'm really pleased. You sound much better than you did in the test there. That's good. The headphone set, the headset is working perfectly. So just to test the quick, we've got a hi from Rodrigo on LinkedIn. You can all see that on the screen, can you?
Yes, we can, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. All right, and we're going live across about 8 platforms at the moment, across the USA and the UK and worldwide, doing various different ways and means of reaching people. And we've got Maria saying hi. We've got Diana saying hi. Diana, I'm really looking forward to seeing you later. I'm making some really great progress with your book, and it is incredible, Diana. So I can't wait to see you later in the week. Right. So anyone else, if you're watching and you'd like to be a part of the stream, you'd like to have your question or your comment up on the screen, then all you've got to do is put it in the chat box or wherever you're watching. It will come up. I'll be able to share it with the lads. So I think we should just start with a quick fire round if you're all happy and comfortable with that. Let's work our way around the screen. So I've got Matt at the top and then Wayne and then Gary. So we'll work around like that for the moment. Excuse me. Right then. So just to put a bit of frame on this, chapter 2 is called Good Times. There's a bit about my childhood and obviously alongside some of my early DJ gigs when things started to happen in that instance. But of course, I also talk a lot about my first car. And my first car being a bright orange Ford Cortina. I even remember the number plate. This is how sad I am. I think it's something. It definitely was 780W. That was the end of it. I think it was AGK 780W. I don't know why I remember that, but that's weird. Anyway, there we go. So what I would say is, how do you know me? First of all, Matt, how do you know me? And tell us about your first ever motor.
Well, we both worked together at Heathrow Airport, going back nearly 8 years ago now, I think. And so that's how we met for our sins. And then my first car was a grey Vauxhall Nova, and the worst thing is I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But the worst thing about it was every time it rained, the seal in the sunroof had completely gone. And in my infinite wisdom, I never replaced it, but it always leaked on the passenger side. So not at all. So I used to have to. So every time I remembered it was raining, I had to run out with a towel and stick it on the passenger seat. Otherwise, my girlfriend would get in my car when I picked her up from work, and she'd be moaning like hell the whole journey because I've just around it.
You would do if you've got a wet butt,
right? But I was perfectly fine.
Mate, you need to learn how to treat your girls, mate. Treat your women. I'm sure. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah. Right.
So look, let's keep on going. Wayne, how do you know me? And tell us about your first car.
Well, I think I got introduced to you. I'm not sure exactly how. Just because I discovered you online or was brought to you by those laws of attraction that you think of, and I kind of see a lot of what you've been up to myself, and I think just kind of bonded on that really. In terms of cars, the first car I started driving was actually a blue Ford Escort, which was my father's car when I was 16.
Yeah.
Then went on the road with it. He then got made redundant, lost the car, and I ended up driving his he had a Morris Minor. So then I had a bit of an experience when I was 17 years old because I couldn't get on with the clutch. Literally got stuck on an uphill junction. He's yelling in one ear, got car horns and everything going. Got out the passenger door and have never driven a car again since.
Is that right?
Really?
A fear. It's probably one of the fears I have to overcome.
Traumatized about
so,
you.
yeah.
That's quite funny actually, because I had a blue Ford Escort after my orange Cortina. My blue Ford Escort was my next car, but I crashed it twice. Once into a tractor, and then once into something else, and it got fixed up. But all my friends used to call it the Matchbox because it was so like it was so patched up. You know what I mean? It was just like it had been so beaten up. And of course, we have to pay homage to the In-Betweeners as well, right? The In-Betweeners was they didn't have a yellow Cinquecento, wasn't it?
Cinquecento, yeah, that's right.
With a red door.
That's brilliant. That's right. That's amazing. Right. Okay. So we've got a few other messages. Kevin from Canada is saying, looking forward to a great session. Great to have you here, Kev. Pete Weston, Dancing Dad. Those of you who watched last week. Dancing Dad, Pete Weston saying, evening chaps. And Caroline is saying, good to see you here for chapter 2. So that's it. They were in the book club last week. So that's fantastic. Great to have you guys on board. So then, and of course, remember, you can watch these videos back across my YouTube, across all social medias for Mark Wilkinson Official and Life Remix. So it's all good. So Gary, how do we know each other? And tell us about your I'm assuming it's your terrible first car, unless had some sort of Mercedes or something.
Yeah, unfortunately not. So so we met back in the last summer when I reached out looking for some support and some coaching. And yeah, I haven't really looked back since then, going through some sessions and going through this stuff with you as you release your book, and just getting more and more into this world of coaching, training, and really understanding like the law of attraction and amongst other things. So it's
and your role in it, right? And your responsibility, your role within it.
Yeah, exactly. So on that journey with you at the moment, when it comes to first car, it was a red Citroen Saxo. That was my mum's, and then much like the chapter tonight, shall I say, I wrote it off during some good times, ending pretty badly. And
sometimes they do. Most of the time they can do. Yeah.
So that ended up reversed into a ditch and a bush, and that was the end of that car. But some great times.
My blue Ford Escort. I had a particularly late night. And those of you who read Good Times will understand why I might have had a few late nights. But I had a particularly late night, and then I got woken up a particularly early morning because I was supposed to be going somewhere to see someone, and we needed to pay a visit. It needed to happen. My mum said, I don't think you should drive, son. I think you're going to crash your car today. This story is not in the book. And lo and behold, about 4 o'clock that afternoon, I had to ring her up and go, Mum, I've crashed into a tractor. You were right. Any chance you could come and pick us up? Now, you also remember the story that's in here is about, in Life Remixed, is about, one of them is my mum said to me, he's not allowed to stop growing until he's 6'4". And it's exactly how tall I am. And if you ever need the evidence of the power of words, some of these stories are just you tie it up and you go, oh yeah. Perhaps it might have been better if she told me I was going to be a multi-millionaire, right?
I was going to say, does she have the Euro million numbers? I think that's still good time, haven't we?
So look, we're here to talk about chapter 2, Good Times. Before we just jump into that, I'm going to start with a little quote. But before I even start with the quote, I'm just going to frame something. You guys have all been on the e-colours awareness session with me. And each one of you came out as a top colour blue. So that means you're very supportive, all three of you. You've got a lot of empathy for people. So I'm expecting a really nice supportive session where we'll all be friendly to each other. If there's any digs at each other, I will be frankly surprised. But at the same time, I'm also quite happy to take them as well. You know that, right? So look, chapter 2, Good Times, Life Remixed. Here we are. This is what we're reviewing. The first quote I've got here is, strange how the best moments of our lives we scarcely notice except in looking back. That's quite interesting, isn't it? How the best moments of our lives we scarcely notice, except in looking back. Do you think we miss the moment sometimes, Matt? Or have you got anything on any thoughts on that one?
100%. I think for me personally, I always look back and think, wow, what great times they were, and at the time you were sort of too bogged down in your everyday life to actually appreciate it. But one of the main things I think when I look back on my life as a whole, I think right now I've got 2 young kids, aged 4 and 11, and it's hard work. It's not that they're bad kids, but just because if anyone's got children, it's a constant grind. And I think that when that constant grind stops, I think after my wife and I have been on the holidays and the cruises and all the rest of it, we'll probably look back and say that those were the best days of our lives, and we wish we could have them back. But yeah, I don't think you ever appreciate it when you're in the here and now.
Someone said to me once that when you're the goldfish in the bowl, the last thing you know about is water. And I thought it's quite a good phrase, that, isn't it? Because when you're in the thick of it, if you're not careful, you're just doing, and you don't actually take a little step back and go, oh, hang on a minute, this is amazing. And that's one of the things I pride myself on now, or I certainly value myself now, because I am able to do that, and I am able to actually step away, with the years of experience and everything that I've had and I've put in Life Remixed. I'm able to step away a bit and go, okay, let's start to appreciate what's actually happening here and making sure that I'm really living it and really enjoying it. Because the last thing you need to do is to get to that point when you're 50, 60, 70, 80 or whatever and just look back and go, oh, is that it?
Yeah.
I think there's a great moment in Fawlty Towers. I remember when Basil Fawlty's pretending his wife's having a go at him, Sybil's having a go at him, and he pretends that he's talking to God when he's going up to the pearly gates, and he goes, all right, God. He's like, and he goes, Zoop. He goes, what was that? He goes, that was your life, mate. He goes, can I have another? No, sorry, it doesn't work that way. So I think it's really important to actually really try to, I certainly missed a lot of my life through various reasons, but certainly looking back at it, because you've read it.
Right.
Looking back at it, there's moments where I think to myself, oh, I wish I'd been more present, and I wish I'd really got my head around it. What about you, Gary? You got anything on that one about best moments looking back?
No, well, to be honest with you, I agree with what Matt's saying, and then for the last 6 months that we've been talking, a hell of a lot of what we've been saying is around being conscious, present, all of the stuff that you just mentioned, and actually that's allowed me to enjoy those moments for what it's been whilst we're in the pandemic, but actually really recognizing any positive moments that I have, any opportunities that are kind of there or manifest themselves in front of me, and then really just trying to take everything that I can from that. So it's just a constant continuation of trying to be conscious, and it's something that I'm obviously 6-9 months into as opposed to 6-9 years into, but I can definitely see the benefits of trying to be conscious and present in all moments, and taking the positives from them. So that quote really resonates with how I used to be, though, for sure.
I mean, you're 15 years younger than me, so I wish I'd been listening.
Say that again. 15 years younger.
15 years younger than me. So we'll come to you in a sec, Wayne. But Pete says my first car was a Maestro, possibly the worst car ever made. We used to get driving through puddles. Oh, we are so the in-betweeners. All of us are so the in-betweeners. Wayne, memories looking back, things you wish you'd sort of been more present for.
I think the main word is just like, as Gary said, it's just awareness. As you get older, and then especially as you sort of open your mind and you learn, these new concepts, and then you think, well, I wasn't aware at the time. You were just kind of living and, like I said, going through the moments with whatever it is, with the hedonism or craziness it was, and it was, because I was in that life type of lifestyle as well, in a different kind of way. But it's crazy when you're up there behind the decks and everything what's going on night after night after night, and you are literally on a gravy train, and you don't know when you're going to fall off, and then suddenly you fall off.
Yeah, definitely. I think the doubts and the fears and the worries and the anxieties of that life, without the assets and without the sort of foundations, if you like, to back it up, are certainly things that can cause a young man or a young person a lot of anxiety. And that anxiety, as you've read, that anxiety took me down in the end, and I think it's a story worth sharing, and clearly lots of people are identifying with the same kind of stuff that we're talking about here. So I think that's really, really powerful.
Mark, I was going to ask you on that actually. Do you think that anxiety that you clearly felt the whole way through that journey, do you think that that's something that's relatively unique in that industry to you, or do you think that's commonplace?
I would say it's pretty commonplace, unless you've got strong foundations and or parents with lots of money or whatever, I think you're just trying to make the best of the situation, but you're doing it for the right reason. You do it, I was doing music because it made me feel alive, and it made me feel so like, those few hours on a Friday or Saturday night on a great gig were indescribable almost. There's moments where I've stood in front of 1,000 people or more, singing, dancing, cheering, stomping for more music that I've chosen, that they're loving. It's powerful. It's almost like a drug in itself. But I think I've said many times before now that if I could go back and have a quick word with my 20-year-old self, I would. But
very much like the striker that can't recreate the goal, the feeling of scoring a goal, sort of thing.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's like scoring a goal, standing in front of people like that. But you're doing it for a few hours, and the energy that you feel, the energy from the dance floor, that energy flows to and through you. And it just is so uplifting. It's so uplifting. While we're talking about dodgy motors, Diana said she had a sky blue Vauxhall Cavalier. Oh, yeah, that's right up there. That's right up there, Diana. That's right.
How do you insure a Vauxhall Cavalier? I'd never have been able to insure one of them. They must have been a fortune.
So look, the other quote before we move on is, "Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened." And I think that's very powerful as well, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, this is not a sort of like, oh, poor me kind of chapter or anything like that. It's actually smile because it happened, because it was incredible. And the upshot of all of this was I had a story to tell and something that I could share, which I think is valuable and it's going to help a lot of people as we come out of COVID. The mental health agenda, the anxiety, the addictions, all that kind of stuff is things that I can certainly help people with because I've experienced it.
Yeah.
So so it's all good. So let's keep going. So obviously I mentioned a lot about cassette tapes. Who remembers cassette tapes here exactly? How many have we got here?
Yeah.
We got 2.5.
I still have a tape player, I think, somewhere.
2.5. One of my friends moved house the other day and he sent me a picture of like about 50 cassette tapes in a box with all Mark Wilkinson Ministry of Sound 95, 96, 97 all written on them and that. So I need to get those off him and maybe try and get them onto some sort of digital thing, because that would be amazing to listen to those.
I've got to be honest. I always remember I had a tape player. I didn't have a record player or a CD player. I was given a tape player, and I bought a few things from our Price or wherever it was I bought the stuff from. And I remember going through my dad's old cassette collection, and there was like Bread and other bands from like the 70s and the 60s, and there was one that was on there that said Derek and Clive live.
You don't want to put that.
I must have been about 8.
Oh no!
I just remember this big scramble. My dad running across the room trying to stop me pressing play on the button.
You might have heard some bad words then. You might have.
Well, it's nothing I hadn't heard from him before, but yeah, it's
yeah, clearly.
I think it's more what my mum would say if you knew I'd heard it. I think.
Yeah, I mean it's great. I mean the way we store music nowadays, literally my entire record collection used to be like 10,000 records or something. They're now on one little USB key. You know what I mean? I just plug it in, and I remember years of carrying records around, massive record cases, doing your backing because you're carrying like one of them or two of them on each shoulder, and you're trying to get somewhere. And then you always have your mate who wanted to get into the club for free. And he'd be like, "Can I carry your records, Mark?" I'd be like, "Yeah, you go, mate. Just don't knock yourself out." Yeah, carry those for me, mate, because they're breaking my back. Off you go. And you'd have your mate, your mule, would be in there like. Oh,
did they get paid?
No, they got in for free though. They saved themselves 15 quid. They saved
a drinks voucher or two as well if they were lucky.
They saved a tenner to get in and 2 drinks vouchers. That's it. That's it. So Matt, before we came on as well, I mean, obviously the other chaps were listening as well, but you've really been sort of tickled a little bit by my first international DJ gig in Paris.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I've read this chapter because I knew I was coming on. Obviously, I've gone back to make sure that I haven't missed anything. And even then, I still laugh just as hard as I did the first time I read it. 18-year-old Mark Wilkinson from Hampton, knowing how leafy suburb it is, and all of a sudden there you are in the capital of France in a very hedonistic situation, so to speak. It was brilliant.
Yeah, well, I remember it was a week. I got the phone call. As you can read, and he was like offering me like $1,000 to go, and you know, it's quite a lot of money.
How'd you turn that down? Yeah,
I was like, yeah, all right then. So I went over there, and the Friday night was in a like, you know, proper gay club, right? I mean, it was just like loads of naked men and me in my t-shirt, you know, trying to hide my embarrassment. But they loved the music. I mean, the gay crowd love house music worldwide. Yeah, right. It's incredible, and the energy was phenomenal. But then, yeah, there was a few other moments in there that I struggled with, and then of course the Saturday night DJing and the same weekend when we got kicked off for the promoters. Dealer friend to actually come onto the decks. He asked us if we could stand aside, and we were like, all right. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't all glamour. Let's put it that way. It wasn't all glamour. Yeah, I mean, Wayne, you must have had a few gigs and things that were kind of like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of difficult. You kind of throw me on the spot there, so I've got to. I can't really, you know.
Want me to come back to you? Sorry? Have a think about it, and I'll come back to you if you want.
Okay.
But Gary, I mean, as far as music and clubs goes, have you been out in clubs much when you were younger? I mean, because obviously you're a family man now, aren't you? So
yeah, no. So it was very much bars when I was going from I'd say 18, but it was more like 16, 15 when we started trying to get in and started getting lucky on a few nights going into bars. But I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's quite a famous club in Essex anyway, called Duke's Genesis. It's no longer there. But
I thought you were going to drop.
That was the first club I ever went to.
No,
really?
Duke's in Chelmsford. Yeah.
I thought you were going to drop EFCC on me there for a minute. The old Epping Forest Country Club. I was talking with a mate that came up in a conversation earlier. The EFCC. Does anyone remember that? Or am I just on my own?
I've heard of it, but yeah, never been. It's
legendary, crazy place. But anyway, yeah, go on. So Gary, yeah, it was more bars when you were out. You weren't necessarily
more bars or Dukes, and then obviously the festival era as well in like the early 2000s through to now I suppose was what I did. Chelmsford again, V Festival right on the doorstep. So so that was really my experience. But yeah, and now love going out to IB for when we can, but not sure when the next trip will be.
Maybe not this summer, right? I don't know. We'll have to wait.
By the sounds of it, I think we kind of missed the boat, Gary. You and I, just because sort of house music, dance music in general, become really commercialised by the time I was sort of ready to go out and go to clubs.
Exactly, and I love hearing stories or reading back about the old warehouse scene parties. And that exactly, and that sort of
they were crazy days. They were crazy days. I mean, literally someone just threw a sound system into a warehouse, and you know, I remember like, you know, there'd be like cars like literally driving around, you know, and people like, you know, winding it
service stations and stuff like that. Like,
where's the rave? Does anyone know? Yeah, follow me. And off we went, a train of cars to this. And I mean, I think one of the ones I mentioned here in chapter 2, I think it's in chapter 2, is the we went to the Didcot train museum. And we're in the Didcot steam train museum, and it was like a magical mystery tour. We bought tickets to this thing, and we all like got on coaches, and we just ended up at this like steam museum, and it was just, you know, I mean, it was a full-on rave for like 12 hours from like 10 till 10. You know, it was just madness. I mean, Wayne, favorite clubs and places that you know that you were.
I mean, a lot of the stuff I did was actually sort of fairly local. I sort of never got to be as grand, and I did a couple of tours. I sort of spent 6 months out in China, which I just thought I fancied a change. So I saw a job advertised, and then ended up going in China. That's actually probably one of the stories, because when we arrived at the place, which was a place called Harbin, which is North China, and they had this really famous ice festival. So there was me. I think it was about 23, 24 at the time. So we arrived in this place in the middle of nowhere. didn't know anybody. Nobody could really speak a word of English. And there was this massive club that hadn't even been finished built. So we ended up thinking, what on earth have we got ourselves into? So about 2 or 3 weeks later, somehow they finished the club and we started sort of DJing in this massive, and then sort of out a big like kind of cinema, might have been an old cinema or something like that. So the DJ box was at the front and it all kind of went back. And it was the bizarrest thing, because when we used to play music, the Chinese would all come and sort of stand in a line and just dance to the beat of the music. So every time there was a break in the music, they got a bit lost. So you as the DJ had to improvise. So you can imagine the chaos that used to happen there. But sort of going back to the funny story, I remember once they sort of had karaoke rooms that was in another part of the building. I just remember once we kind of finished the night, I think, and then the next thing we heard was these gunshots that were going off in the karaoke rooms, and then we thought, "Oops! I think it's about time that we got out of here." So
the music off. Time to go home.
Yeah.
Well, the music had already finished that night. Suffice to say, I didn't get in a club. We didn't arrive for the club the next day, and we hot-footed out of there on the plane. The first plane that we could.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some strange ones. I mean, I've been fortunate to DJ in all kinds of places all over the world, but yeah, China had a couple of strange, moments in China, some other ones in Russia. I mean, there's a whole other book I could write here. Obviously the purpose of Life Remixed is not, is to share some of that stuff so everyone knows where I was coming from. But I think there's another idea in my mind that's going to form for, just ridiculous things that happened to us when we were young lads, as DJs. Right. Because we made a career out of it for I was like 15, 17 years, full-time career, and that in itself is quite miraculous. And it happened because of the passion, happened because of the vision, it happened because of just the opportunity. It was all there for us. And it was like, well, you couldn't not do it, you couldn't not do it. You couldn't just like pass it up. It was like, no, come on. It was like, I wasn't good enough to be a footballer, but I can do this, and I think that was something really special. And I do share obviously a few of my favourite DJs in chapter 2. I mean, Gary, you probably have you heard of any of this lot? I mean, many of these DJs, because these are like some of my favourite DJs that moved my soul and my life. But actually, you probably didn't, apart from obviously Danny Rampling, you've met probably through me and through these. Things and Rocky and stuff like that, you might not even, some of these guys might have passed you by.
A number of them. Obviously Danny Rampling, like you say, Express 2 had the hit that you mentioned, and that was relatively recent. And then I think the only other one on there that I recognised was Roger Sanchez.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a great list. I mean, I'm just looking at it myself now. Rampling, Terry Farley, Express 2, Frankie Knuckles, Tony Humphries, CJ McIntosh, Norman J, obviously MBE, who I would love to get on an interview one day, Norman, if you are watching, then come and join us for an interview. And Roger Sanchez and Sasha. So those are all people that kind of, all like had their moment in my life that actually like got me really moving and really buzzed up about music. So, but yeah, I think, we were fortunate. It's not necessarily the time right now that it was back then, but there's still DJs that are out there. These guys are still doing it, and as soon as we can all get out together to a little party, I think we should not a full-on all-nighter, but I think we should get ourselves out again and see a bit of music and enjoy ourselves. And I was saying this on my Saturday night DJ mix. I said, if anyone says to you, do you want to go out Saturday night again, right? Never say no ever again, right? Because you've had 12 months or more, and probably another 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months where you're not going to be able to go out. So if someone invites you, find a way to get out and go, right? Never take it for granted ever again, right?
You know it.
I would just like to say, going back to the list, I'd like to add on there David Morales, which is obviously Frankie Knuckles' sidekick, and also for the remixes, Grant Nelson.
Oh, Grant's, yeah.
He could smash out a banging remix.
I mean, Joey Negro. I mean, Dave Lee, as he's now, obviously he's ditched that name, but Dave Lee. I mean, the names are just incredible, and the people. There's so many talented people out there making music, playing music, and still doing it even now, which is great. And so, yeah. But I mean, the point of this chapter, of course, is the good times, right? And so we have to acknowledge them. But let's also, let's keep moving. Let's keep talking. obviously conversation pieces. I was inspired, obviously, with music and everything, but then obviously I went back to the beginning in the chapter and spoke a bit about my childhood, and I've been quite open about it. You know, I think there was challenges in my family. I learned a lot of difficult ways around, you know, anxiety and stuff. I think my dad had PTSD after World War II when he came back, and undiagnosed, of course, at the time. But I think it certainly had an effect on me and my family, let's put it this way. But I heard this quote, and I'd love each of your thoughts on it. And I'll just throw it out to you guys, and you can just join in. Let's make it a conversation. But parenthood, right now, I'm not a parent, but obviously I've got parents. But parenthood is about guiding the next generation while forgiving the last one. What's your thoughts? Putting you on the spot, any of you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you are all victims of other victims, if you like. You know, no one is perfect, and also no child comes along with an instruction manual. So it's almost like you always sort of take the good that you had from your own upbringing, and then maybe not do the things that didn't quite work so well for you. But it only ever comes, well, I'd like to think it only ever comes from a place of good. You know, I was very fortunate. I come from a very loving family. I was brought up, you know, by my mum and my dad, and they both, you know, were great. You know, anything I could ever want, you know, we got. But ultimately, there was always that sort of, you know, I was never allowed to join the army. I was never allowed to ride a motorbike. I was never allowed to, not that I wanted to do any of these things, by the way, but it was almost like that, wanted to keep me safe, always wanted to keep me safe. And I don't think it's any coincidence that's how I ended up doing what I do for a living.
It's a fair point, because you are a tip-top health and safety manager, obviously at Heathrow for many years there as well. But yeah, I mean, I think it's important to keep people safe. Of course it is. But as you well know, there's elements of risk, isn't there? There's elements of risk in life. And if you don't step outside of a comfort zone, even take a small calculated risk to do something, then you're never going to grow. So, you know, there's a balance between keeping safe and then actually, you know, being able to move forward, isn't there? And I mean, I know you've been on a couple of courses with me and stuff like that, and we're working out, like, you know, the amount of money that we all get paid for, like, a PAYE and stuff like that. And it's quite shocking when you start to actually break it down into a calculator, where you suddenly go, hang on a minute, I'm trading all of my life for what? You know, and it's interesting. I know that's a conversation probably for another time, but I think it's important, isn't it? I think it's important to understand that yes, it's about keeping people safe, but also Richard Branson's parents, for instance. I've read a few of Richard Branson's books. Richard Branson's parents basically just told him to get out there and get on with it. You know, they literally drop him off in a field and tell him to find his own way home. There's stories of him, like, you know, well, if you want that, then you're going to have to go and, like, you know, cut 20 lawns or clean 30 cars or something. Do you know what I mean? And they just kicked him out the front door and said, go and get on with it. So
basically, if my mum and dad are watching, that's why I'm not a multi-billionaire. It's on you. It's your fault.
Well, this is part of it just proved my point, because we do have to take responsibility for ourselves, and we have to forgive them. We have to forgive them because they did the best they could, right?
They did.
Yeah. Gary, got any thoughts on that one?
No, I think it's really adding to what Matt sort of said there about, you know, it's always coming from a good place at that point. And I think just the way that people grow and the eras that people grow up in, unfortunately, you end up as your parents get to the age that ours are now, they see the world in a different way to what we did. And that's the similar thing that my kids, Matt's kids, and so on are gonna be seeing it, that once they get into adulthood and they start wanting to do things, you know, their way of doing it, they're going to look at us and they're going to start telling us how we should be doing it, because this is a more efficient, better way. And we're like, hang on a minute, I've done this my whole life like that. Like,
yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. I've got something to share on that as well, though. There's you can Google this and search it, but in really advanced societies, and when I say advanced societies, I mean the sort of societies, that's a mouthful, the sort of societies that maybe don't, you know, not Western societies or anything like that. The grandparents bring up the children. So the children are born to people of, well, your age, our age. The children are born to people of our age and then passed to the grandparents, and the grandparents bring up the children. And then we go out and we still keep working and earning the money and everything else. But the grandparents, because they've been through, you know, you think about your think about your parents when you were like 10 and the difference they are now to when you're 40 or 50 or whatever. Yeah, it's a massive difference, isn't it? Because they've seen more of life, they've been through more of life, and they've actually been able to adapt and change, and they're not so anxious, and they're not working so hard, and they've got more time, and they're calmer, and it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, when you start to think about it? I mean, pass the child to the grandparent and let the and then you guys carry on with what you're doing. I think it's an interesting point, and I was
economically it makes sense, I think, but from a human nature perspective, I couldn't imagine that. I'd struggle to do that, but it makes sense, right?
I think the point is that it's not like you would see less of them. It's just that they'd be getting looked after by the grandparents, and you'd be out working during the day, and then you'd come back and you'd still get to spend time together, sort of thing. So it's not like just shipping them off. It's like everyone living together, but the grandparents do the majority of like the child care or the bringing up, because they've got less anxiety, for instance.
Yeah.
So no, it's an interesting point. Wayne, I mean, you got anything you want to share on that one?
I think for me, I was brought up in a loving family, but I was brought up as an only child, and what I wasn't given was guidance. So I was really, I was the only child. I was overprotected, and then obviously when I'm growing up, I just kind of drifted my way because I never really had anything much to focus on. Like I think later on in the book, when you mentioned that you didn't have any focus at school, I was exactly the same. I was, I understood everything really well, but I just lacked focus. So now I started playing up. Obviously, I finished school, didn't know what to do. Let's do a couple of A levels. Finish the A levels. What to do? Let's go and get a degree. Finish the degree. What can I do? Then just kind of ended up going into DJing, but I never really had any focus or drive or ambition, and I've always kind of fallen on my luck or I've always managed to. I'm the type of person that's always managed to fall on his feet.
Yeah. Well, I think we all do if we've got a certain amount of drive and passion to a degree to survive, to look after ourselves and anyone else. But I take your point, very, very interesting actually as well, that I got easily distracted, and I was kind of like, whatever, let's just get on with it and have fun and whatever. And I've got a few more comments coming in. Caroline's gone back to the car a little bit. Mine was a Honda Civic with neon lights underneath with subwoofers. I was late coming to driving. It was technically my teenage son's, but he couldn't afford it.
There you go. See?
Oh, super mum. I love that. That's hilarious. Gav saying, loving the chat, guys. That's amazing. Diana says, so grateful to have been part of the music movement. And Pete said, my parents always gave me their blessing to go and take risks, travel and see the world and pursue my dreams. That's it, mate. That's great. And to be fair to, I think many parents do that. My mum was pretty relaxed in that respect, although sometimes I was so headstrong I didn't give her the opportunity to actually to have a say in it in some ways. But let's talk a little bit about the In-Betweeners, because we have got our own little episode of the In-Betweeners going on right here, I think. It was basically written about me and my friends. I am essentially Will from the In-Betweeners, because my mum sent me to school dressed as a mini accountant, to a comprehensive school, carrying a briefcase with a set of flares. And I tell you what, I was like, Mum, you're getting me verbal battering, and if not a kick in it. And it was fun. It was, I managed to sort of like get my way through it, but it was certainly a challenging time, and for me to grow. I mean, The In-Betweeners as a TV series, is that something that you resonate with?
I'm really fortunate that the year I left school, my school got a new drama teacher, and that new drama teacher is Mr. Gilbert. It was actually what's his name? I forget his name. Someone will know. Someone will put it on there. But he joined my school literally the year I left. So I'm really glad, because I think if he'd have been one of my teachers, that would have ruined the entire TV show for me, because I probably wouldn't have liked him very much, and I doubt he'd have liked me either. But yeah, it was but brilliant though, absolutely superb. And to be fair, your book, your brother that turned around and said it's like an episode of The In-Betweeners, but with, and I can't remember, but I sit there thinking it's like an episode of
The In-Betweeners and a Tony Robbins seminar.
Yeah, that's great, because I'm thinking it's The In-Betweeners on acid, but I think reading more into the book, that's probably a bad analogy.
No, it's perfectly fine. I mean, yeah, I get it. I hear you. I mean, it's it was certainly interesting, and it was certainly a moment in time where I had to keep going and sort of understand myself better, but then also understand what was going on around me and stuff like that. So any other shares about your school days or anything like that?
Yes, I've got some. Well, I was also given a briefcase, exactly the same. So I ended up getting sent to a boarding school, which it wasn't a lot different being the new kid
Mr.
that
Gilbert,
goes
Mr. Gilbert
with the briefcase. Add to that, the head.
Chaps, sorry, just hold on for 1 second, right? Wayne, I want you to keep talking, and I want you to talk amongst yourselves for 2 minutes. I'm coming right back. I'll explain in a minute. Keep going, Wayne. Go on.
So anyway, so I was at school. Add to that, my surname was exactly the same as the headmaster's surname. And if you also remember at the time, Harry Enfield had a couple of characters out called Wayne and Waynetta Slob.
Yeah.
So I got an awful lot of stick when I was at school. And however, I just kind of played that idiot role and was forever getting myself into trouble, on detention, on report, and just really being annoying.
I dare say it would help though if you got yourself into trouble with the other kids, that they might have thought that your dad or the mum was the headmaster.
Well, I was called sort of teacher's pet all the time, but I think they knew that we weren't related in the end. But obviously, I was called. It wasn't a positive association.
Could have been a lot worse though, Wayne, to be fair.
Not much. Not with Harry Enfield doing what he was doing.
There's always something going on at some point that something comes in and you're just like, oh, for God's sake, like kids are brutal. They pick up on everything. Nothing goes amiss. And I think going back to the in-betweeners scenario, I think every group of friends at school could probably relate in some way to an in-betweeners episode of something that's taken place on that. I think that's why it was so popular. But
I think it was the nicknames that got me. To be fair, a bloke. No, this is like school days. Where you left, we're talking about school days. But there's one bloke I used to work with who had a nickname called Mumbo. And apparently, everyone was like, well, why is your nickname Mumbo? And he's like, oh, I don't. I said, no. And one of his mates knew about it. No, go on, tell him. He said, oh, because my mum had BO. So literally, his mum had BO once, and for the rest of his school life, he was called Mumbo.
That's brutal.
Just brutal.
That is extraordinary and hilarious. And wow. I mean, the thing about it is that kids, Gary's gone. But the point is that the in-betweens. I mean, I identify with Will, and just to be clear, that's never happened before. But I needed a pee, and I had to go use the bathroom. But do you remember when Will has a problem in the exam room? Do you remember? So I identify with Will 100%. You know what I mean? And that was quite funny. But each of the characters, we all had a mate who just told like huge lies. A bit like Jay in In-Betweeners, and then we all had a mate who was not the brightest. Like Neil, and then we all had a mate who used to pull quite a few girls, like Simon, right? He's just, I think that's the skill of any of these shows that really work, like your Friends or your Frasers or your In-Betweeners or any of these kind of shows, Modern Family or something like that. You always recognise things, don't you, about yourself and in some of the characters.
I think they're a perfect blend of everyone you've ever known. But between all of them, you can pick characteristics out of each of them that you can put into every single one of your friend groups, particularly during school. No,
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, and so we have to talk a little bit about our childhoods or certainly our teenage years, and it was fun times for all of us, of course. But fight or flight, for me, I started to try and escape my family kind of challenges and all those kind of things. I tried to. Well, I didn't fight it. I just float. I just tried to get as far away as possible by drinking, partying, having a car, my first car at 17, driving it all around the UK, going to all these raves, suddenly getting DJ gigs, suddenly ending up in Paris in crazy nightclubs and then all around the world and everything else. And that lasted for pretty much from 14, pretty well 16, 17 when I started to get DJ gigs, but 14 when I started drinking alcohol, right away until I was probably 36, 35, 6. You know, I mean, you know, we're talking getting on for like 20 years, right? I mean, you know, I didn't do things by halves, but I know you guys probably have not been as extreme as that, which is why, you know, you haven't, you know, had the opportunity to write a crazy.
That's why we haven't written a book, no.
Yeah, up to this point, but you'll have other things that you can write, I know. But as far as, you know, your own kind of experience of fight or flight, you know, is there things that you kind of, you know, you look back on that you might have done differently? Any of you?
I think going back to what you're saying about the whole fight or flight thing to begin with, and possibly the reason why you went on that really resonated with me when reading that chapter. I mean, not exactly the same scenario, but when you talk about you know, that fear kind of always being in the house sort of thing, or, you know, something that you felt in you that felt beyond the, you know, your years as a child that you should be experiencing, I feel like I resonate with. Always felt like there was potential, you know, the potential of my dad being made redundant or something like that, which always sort of triggered a little bit of fear, worry, concern in me, that then sent me not on a 20-year bender like you, but like on a route of, you know, wanting to be independent, have a job, go traveling and do all of those things, which, you know, in some ways, when you look at it, actually, you know, you don't want to grow up through those years feeling like that. But when it spurs you on to make sure that you don't go without, or put that fear in your life, and you work hard, or you go and see the world whilst you've got the opportunity, then you've got the flip side, and that kind of flight scenario, but using it in a positive way, I think. But one of
the things you picked up on with me earlier was Tales of a Professional Idiot as well, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, it just made me laugh. The title of that particular section in chapter 2, and then the disclaimer.
Yeah.
So
that was good.
I had to write the disclaimer because you know, they were tales of a professional idiot. You know, I mean, if my son came to me, I haven't got a son, obviously, or any children, but if a son of mine came to me and wanted to start talking to me about wanting to what's the word, experiment with things like that, then, you know, there would have to be some, you know, not tough words, but there'd have to be some realism put into it, you know. And I don't think you can deny your past. I don't think you should deny your past. I think at the end of the day, you've got to be real with your past. I mean, Matt, just out of interest, actually, before I get to Wayne as well on that kind of whole piece around fight or flight. But Matt, can you imagine if I'd have written this book when we were in the corporate world at Heathrow?
Well, the thing is, you're saying that there are elements of this book or things that you say that you were saying 8 years ago, and probably to me, I don't know, maybe to others too. But yeah, it's funny because do you remember in other things you've done, you've sort of said about how you had to face your fears when you started working, particularly at Heathrow, where you had to stand up in front of people. Well, it's one of these things that I'm not, you know, top colour blue. Public speaking is not necessarily my favourite thing to do in the world, but I kind of over time learned that in order to get on, you've had to do it eventually. Yeah. And before you joined Heathrow, I had to go and do the same induction that you used to do to sort of 200 builders. And I remember one of the first ones I've done, it was in a conference room in some hotel at Heathrow along the Bath Road. And this conference room was huge, and every seat got filled. And I could feel, I mean, I don't think I've sweat as much in my life. I mean, it was horrific. And I
bet you had fight or flight there. I bet you.
Well, this is what I'm saying. So what I learned with myself is that when I'm really, really nervous, I wish I could have done. When I'm really, really nervous, I use humour as a defence mechanism. And I didn't know this about myself at the time. So if you remember, Wayne, Gary, these slides were kind of like, this is what you shouldn't do. This is how we want you to be. And this is when, you know, this is how you do work at the airport. And one of the slides was basically a site that got closed down by one of Mark's predecessors. And there was just rubbish everywhere. And in the construction industry, and I'm sorry if there's any electricians listening, but in the construction industry, the electricians are known to be quite messy. Okay, just quite.
They don't Don't touch a broom, Matt.
Don't touch a broom. Don't touch a broom. And it's like a running joke. But unfortunately, I decided in my infinite wisdom and this particular day to sort of say, and this is what we don't expect to see, pointing at the screen. I said, obviously, site full of electricians. What's their deal, eh? And I think I put in I said, I hate them. I hate electricians. And what I didn't realise,
the room,
mate, I lost the whole room. An official complaint. It literally, a couple of days later, someone said to me, "Do you make a joke about electricians?" Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, I couldn't remember. Might have done. Yeah, you're going to now have to go give an official. They've made an official complaint about you, and you've got to go and give an apology. Apparently, one of the electricians was on the bus going into the centre, and said, "You work for?" I won't say the company name, but you work for such and such a company. He's like, "Yeah, I do." Your health and safety bloke hates electricians.
Ah, no.
Yeah, apparently it went around the whole airport. I hate electricians, and I thought I had to sort of go around apologising to everyone.
You've got to be careful in a small city like Heathrow.
Right.
But yeah, fight or flight. Yeah, good, nice joke, Gary, about the flight. Yeah, well done. I like that. But certainly, when you're faced with these kind of public speaking and these big moments, there's a part of you get those butterflies and those anxious moments, and you're a bit like, and it's like, and Wayne, with DJ gigs and stuff like that as well, fight or flight. You do have to overcome that moment, don't you? Or when you kind
Definitely.
of like,
I think. Well, I would say for me, this is the first time I've ever done one of these, so I'm sort of pretty nervous. And sort of going back to the DJ gigs, I was always nervous whenever the first time I went to a new venue. You want to learn the equipment, but then. When you used to look back at the things that you used to stress about, like especially if you messed the mix up, you beat yourself up for that the whole night, or maybe even
sometimes the days
afterwards. And then you think, but then you just realise, well, actually nobody cares.
No.
As long they really, you're the only person that's really beating yourself up about it.
I think one of the things is that we get hung up on that about what other people are thinking about us. And it's just a waste of energy. It's a waste of time. And the sooner I mean, there's quotes later on in the book, what anyone else thinks of you is none of your business, and comparison is the thief of joy. And these kind of quotes that really just resonated with me when I was ready to listen to them. And I was like, oh, I've wasted so much time thinking about something that's utterly irrelevant, And I think it's so important to face these fears and move through them for sure, So fight or flight is a big one. Tales of a professional idiot, of course. Yes, there is a disclaimer in the book. I did have the non-stop raving. There's a few stories in there. There's the international gigs. There's the non-stop party week in, week out for like 2 decades. Then, of course, there's meeting Rocky and like the problem kids were born. But yeah, I mean, it's a great chapter when I look back on it. I found
it really poignant because there's all these really funny stories or really wild anecdotes that you're telling. And the whole time I keep thinking, his dad's not well, or he's feeling, or there's he's totally insecure. He's at the absolute peak of his abilities as a DJ. He's packing out dance floors, really popular with the punters, and he's more concerned about what other DJs think of him and how long it's going to last, or if he's not good enough or not cool enough. And you never got to enjoy the moment. And I found that quite sad.
I'm really glad that you picked that up. I'm really glad that, obviously, because you and I have never discussed that before. That's not excuse me. That's not something we've discussed. That's something you've read. So I've actually managed to convey that in my writing, which to have it reflected back to me, Matt, is very, very beautiful. And I really appreciate that you understood it where I was. Yeah, I spent so much time wasting thinking about all these, exactly what you just pointed out. What other DJs thought about me. What a waste of time. You know what I mean? The punters liked it and it was all good, But yeah, I missed the moment. I missed the moment hugely.
But there was one thing at that time, Mark, if you remember, it was really, really competitive. The DJs now are a lot more as a unity, as a group, but back in that time it was real dog eat dog. So it was
a lot of judgment. There was a lot of judgment. I was kind of perceived much of the time as like the cheesy sort of the crowd pleaser, the one that played all the records that people knew. When a lot of the DJs were playing like unheard of B-sides that I'll be honest, not many people liked, and they were, they didn't really rock the floor or anything. But that you were seen as a super cool DJ, even if the crowd and the punters didn't like it, you were playing this super cool B-side. And all the other DJs were all like, "Oh, that's really good," choking their chins and saying how good it was. And I'm like, oh, balls to that, let's just have a party, shall we? But yeah, so I had that inner battle going on, the whole way through that period of DJing and into chapter 3, which we'll look at next week. We've obviously lost in music and stuff like that, but yeah, it's fascinating, and I really appreciate you feeding that back to me, Matt, because it's nice to know that my writing actually made sense, and that you obviously know me, but you picked it up without me.
Actually, Mark, I've got something else about your writing, because I found it really easy to read, and as I said, I don't think I've ever read a book cover to cover, but the fact that it was just so easy, interesting, and easy to, it's not a difficult book to read. By that I don't mean it's simplistic, but the way it's actually written out is really easy for a user, or even somebody that wasn't in that environment, to understand and associate with.
Thank you, Wayne. I really appreciate that. I mean, and you've left a wonderful review on Amazon as well, which I'm really, really grateful for. And just anyone who's watching, those reviews of Life Remixed, those are the oxygen that are going to keep the book going and keep it growing. So every single one of you that can leave a review, and Diana, I know you've left some reviews. Really, really I really, really appreciate your review, Diane, and each one of you that's left a review on Amazon, because those are the things that will continue to get this book noticed, so it doesn't just disappear. It will continue to grow and grow and grow. So, but yeah, that is interesting that you say that, Wayne, as well, because I didn't necessarily start out to try and make an easy to read book. What's clearly a thread through my life is that I've had this kind of accessible kind of thing about me. So I've had accessible music. So I had a music taste that was quite, people liked. And so it was easy for them to dance to, and easy for them to enjoy the music and everything else. And that's clearly sort of gone through the records I made, my productions, a few hits and all that kind of stuff. And then all the way through into, obviously now into my next creative venture, into this book as well. So for you to say that to me, Wayne, as well, is really special. And I'm really grateful for that, because, I mean, it just flowed out of me in the end. It just flowed and flowed and flowed.
Yeah,
it was like,
I think that's the word. It has a flow, even though certain chapters repeat what's been mentioned in the other chapters. It's still really easy to follow it. Each chapter as it has its own identity, and yeah.
So if you haven't bought a copy yet, buy one, because there's a couple of glowing. Gary, you want to say anything brilliant about me? No.
Yeah, it all stops now, Mark. I promise.
Well, it does, because you were saying, you made it sound like you have good taste. But
yeah, right. Well, now we're going to talk a little about that.
That's when you mentioned you have good taste, but then you became a Chelsea fan, and I'm like,
huh? Well,
we've all got our crosses to bear, Gary.
One of the things about football, I did put a little dig. I think if I haven't put it, I think it was in chapter 2 when I said a lot of my friends were like Liverpool fans, and I put it in brackets, despite never having been there. Yeah, no, that was my little dig. That was like. But I mean, obviously, Gary, you're a West Ham fan, and to be fair, they're doing all right, I know, this season. But as a West Ham fan from the other side of the tracks, from the other side of London, to me, you resonated a lot to sort of that sort of football journey and that kind of like camaraderie and that kind of group thing with the lads and all that, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that was a lot of where going to football matches and going to the first match with my dad is the first place that you kind of really break away from that perfect home structure that parents are trying to create, and then you start hearing and seeing, you're in the pubs or you're on the stands and you see a different world, and then your old man lets you swear when you're at the games but don't tell your mum and that sort of thing. It was really good. But I think going back to the chapter itself, that was the first part of the book where, after you'd explained a bit about your history and growing up and stuff, that was really where I started to see where it sort of clicked for you in terms of using words like passion, atmosphere, aggression at the football match. Amazing. Like, that was where, as a 14-year-old or however old you were when you first went to Chelsea, you kind of that slapped you around the face, and then it's not surprising that you took that into your DJ career or wanted to go into that sort of industry.
the words that jump out at me, Gary, are like travel, crowds, excitement, people, camaraderie, fun, that sort of like pack mentality. And you know, as a top colour yellow, you know, obviously I had to interrupt you there, which I'm sorry about. It's just I can't help myself. As a top colour yellow, sometimes I have to interrupt. But yeah, no, some people might find that a little bit rude. It's not rude at all. And you know,
top colour blue, it's fine, mate. Apologies.
Yeah, you top colour blue, you're all and agreeing with me, and all that, give me little back rubs and that. But no, it's really, really important that you know, that sort of understanding and that kind of, you know, that I kind of got swept up in that, you know, movement of football, and then going to, like, I remember bunking up to the story in the book about bunking off school on a Wednesday afternoon and ending up in Birmingham, and then the following month ending up in York, you know, and then, you know, on a intercity train, and then coming back and sleeping at my mate's house, you know, in a spare room or whatever, and, you know, then going into school the next morning. I don't know how I got away with that, you know, lying to
what's the point, Mark? Why go to York?
It was just it was a Tuesday night, Wednesday night away game. It was like an adventure. That's the thing. I've always been about adventure. I love adventures. So I'm like, you know, let's you know, that's the music and the industry. That was an adventure, wasn't it? It was a 20-year bender, like Gary's. It was a 20-year adventure. And to be honest, Life Remixed and everything I'm doing now, of all the coaching programs and everything else, that's all an adventure as well. And then putting on an event when we, you know, obviously we're doing the 5 days to remix your life and the e-colors awareness events and all of those online. But when we start to do those, you know, in reality, you know, that becomes like an adventure as well. You know, it's all an adventure.
Life Remixed Club nights coming to the club near you soon.
Life Remixed Club nights. I've just got this feeling about a Sunday at Ministry of Sound from like 4 p.m. till midnight.
Ooh. I've never played at the Ministry of Sound, Mark. It'll be a dream for me.
Watch this space, Wayne. Watch this space. It's happening.
Forward to it.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about male guidance, because obviously, you know, Matt, you picked up there. And when I say let's say masculine guidance, because, you know, don't get me wrong, there's masculine and feminine 50-50 in all of us. We're made up of mum and dad, so there's 50-50 in all of us. But some of us grow up and we accentuate masculine, and some of us accentuate feminine, and then obviously we go out into the world. What was missing in my life, with my dad being sick from when I was 8 years old, essentially for 10 years, he was all over the place. And one of my friends said it once. It's harsh and it's not quite accurate. But in some ways, he gave up like a paper bag in a hurricane. And one of my friends said that. And it's a harsh thing to say, and it's not quite true, but I understand the mentality of that, because he was sick and he was dying for like 10 years, physically and mentally, you know, after the Second World War. If you think both his brothers were killed in the war, it's no heroic Saving Private Ryan to this. It was literally like both your brothers are dead, you know, like... And so, you know, none of us can really even like begin to kind of like, you know, understand that or even commiserate with it or anything really. We can just have like forgiveness and understanding of that. That was the situation. But that was certainly what was lacking in my life, I believe, a strong masculine guidance. My mum did her best, of course she did. And she tried to be both, but it wasn't possible for her. And it's not possible for most parents. Can't be both parents. You know what I mean? You know, for parents to work together, you have a strong masculine and a strong feminine polarity, and that's how it works. So, but, you know, as far as masculine guidance goes for you, Gary, for instance, I mean, you know, how does that work for you? And I know obviously you're learning a lot from our studies, and then you're passing that on to your kids as well, aren't you? Mm-hmm. But yeah, so you've got one kid, haven't you? Did I say kids? You've got one. Sorry, you've got a son, haven't you? Yeah, sorry, my mistake. Yeah. So, but as far as that much strong masculine kind of guidance in your life, does that sort of resonate with you? And has it been there, or how do you feel about it? Or? Yeah,
absolutely. I think it was there. I was brought up in a loving family home atmosphere. I think now that I understand the masculine and the feminine much more than obviously I would have done growing up, I can see the differences in both. I think there was mainly a good balance throughout my sort of childhood, but my dad did go through some sort of midlife crisis kind of scenario as well, and I think reflecting on that in the way that you're talking about it, I can really resonate with how that that polarity, if it's not kept in balance, then it can really start to kind of cause different pain and things going on within that within the home as you grow up through those ages. So I experienced that for a few months whilst he was going through that. But for you to go through that for the majority of your childhood, I can only imagine what that was like, being times by that many years.
Yeah, it was a strange, I think I said at one point, and my mum and brother have read this clearly and put their quotes at the front of it for me and everything as well, which is quite amusing. But sometimes it felt like we were a strange little family, but none of us come from a perfect family. I don't think that's even possible. I think, like you said, Matt, earlier, and I know we've discussed it, victims are victims of victims. It passes down the ages, and until somebody starts to learn a bit more, become a bit more aware, think about this in a different way, study some of the books that I recommend and my own book. But the point is that study this kind of stuff and actually learn more about, it's about self-awareness. And we all know, having done the e-colors, that's the first step in many ways in a self-awareness tool. Because once you've got a self-awareness tool, you can then understand yourself better, but then understand how the other personality types.
It's definitely helped me, Mark. The e-colors thing, especially in terms of understanding other people. I mean, going back to obviously what you were asking about, the male guidance or the masculine guidance. Like Gary, I had a fantastic dad. I couldn't want for better. And I looked up to him. All the things that I sort of, as I've grown into a man, all the things I love, football, tennis, boxing, whatever, all stem from sort of his guidance, sort of just watching him, either watching it, playing it, doing it, whatever. It all kind of stemmed from there. But I also think, my mum played a massive role, particularly from a masculine perspective, because when it came to protecting her children, she was like a lioness. I remember if me or my sister had any trouble at school, she was there like an absolute shot. And I actually felt sorry for some of the teachers or other mums at times, because it was just like all out protection. But yeah, I think especially from my dad's perspective, being a dad, he lost his mum when he was 9.
Right.
So he actually can't remember much about her. So his whole guidance growing up was from his dad. And unfortunately for his dad, his dad come from a very Victorian type home. His parents were quite old when they had him, and that sort of emotional support he never got. I mean, it was so for him to be able to provide exactly the opposite for my sister and I, hats off to him, because no one ever showed him that.
I think be the parent, a lot of advice is this would be the parent that you were missing, if you like, you know what I mean? So you end up compensating more in that area. I think the whole thing for me is about balance. It's about balance. It's about understanding yourself and other people, how you interact. And the more you do this, the more you practice self-development and all the stuff that I put into Life Remixed, the more and more you do it, the more a habit it becomes, the more it programs your subconscious, the easier life gets, and some people will just learn that over time. So they might learn it from 20 to 70, and by the time they get to 70, they go, oh, right, okay, now I've kind of tied all the dots. But for me, I want to get there quicker. I'm like, right, okay, what do I need to learn? How am I going to get there quicker? Let's get on with it. Yellow, red, yellow, red, yellow, red. I've got another question here as well. Pete's come in. Dancing Dad says, you talked about seeing a therapist in this chapter. Did you continue with the therapy? That was interesting, actually. I did have therapy for quite a while. Therapy I found very good. But what I would say around therapy is that it's very much about focusing what's gone on before, and there's a lot of crying and getting rid of like a lot of pent up emotions. So it does work, therapy. Absolutely, it does work. For me, I found it after I'd cried it out for quite a few sessions. I was like, I've had enough of this. Do you know what I mean? I need to be focused. I need to be focusing on now and what's going to happen next. It's all very well what's happened there, and in some ways, this has been a very cathartic experience for me to actually share some of this stuff and actually like share it with my mum and my brother and go, look, it wasn't perfect, and this is my take on what actually happened and what I perceive to be going on rather than what they perceive to be going on. But it's been a good experience. But so for me, I think therapy is important if you've got an acute situation. But I would say coaching for me is more about the motivation to get going forwards. I
think my issue with therapy, Mark, has always been it creates a tag or an excuse for something. So like, if you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic, or if you're a drug addict, I'm always an addict. It's not the case, in my opinion. It's not the case. You shouldn't always be punished for past decisions. You should be able to move on with your life. Well, coaching definitely does that.
Coaching allows you to live now and then move forward. So forgiveness is one of my big ones. Acceptance, total acceptance is another good one, and gratitude. If you can get into forgiveness, acceptance, and gratitude, all of a sudden you're in a situation where it allows you to be free in the now and then actually be able to move forward. So Wayne, as far as the masculine sort of guidance goes and piece for you, how does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I think for me, I grew up, as I said, with a loving mother and father. But what I didn't really get from them was guidance and, to some extent, communication. So a lot of the things. Or a
brother or a sister.
Say again.
Or a brother or a sister.
Yeah. So a lot of the things I had to almost fumble my way through and discover the things myself. So I think as a result of that, I was quite a late developer, and a lot of the things that, you've even mentioned about coaching and strategies, even 3, 4, 5 years ago, I didn't know any of this stuff because I'd just been working, living my life. I didn't have the extremes which you went through. I was pretty much, yes, I had ups and downs, but I was on kind of like a kids roller coaster as opposed to the
Big Dipper.
Yeah. So, so a lot of this thing is all really sort of quite new for me. And I think, the big blessing for me with the lockdown, it's given me the chance to kind of pause my life and sort of learn. As I said, reading the book that you recommended me, especially the David Dida one, that was life changing. That was like, wow, and then I kind of rewound and thought, oh yeah, well, that's why that happened. That's why that happened. That's why that happened. And it's just with all this knowledge and everything that's out there, which I'm still sort of discovering bit by bit by bit by bit, it's just amazing. So I think that's why I've kind of resonated and got to see myself on your sort of journey, but almost coming up a few years behind, as it were.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that, every human mind, if you like, becomes ripe at a certain age when it's ready to, there's no time limit. There's no time limit on this. Some people go through their entire lives and don't have self-awareness, you know what I mean? And they might get it on their rocking chair or their deathbed, you know what I mean? Whereas actually, my disasters or my failures were actually like my opportunity to dust myself off and go again, rather than, say, oh, it's all over. And I think that, the more that we can share these kind of messages, so the more we can learn. And what you say, Wayne, as well, every day is a school day. Every day is a school day. I'm always reading. I'm always studying. I come online and do these talks and talk to people. But I read, I read yesterday's Monday Motivation was about persistence. And I read about persistence. I'm like, yeah, I'm persistent. Yeah, got to keep moving and keep going. So I motivate myself, let alone anyone else, right? But yeah, it's good stuff, mate. And it's as long as we keep learning, and as long as we're committed, Matt, you'll know this, corporate speak, you'll love this. As long as we're committed to continuous improvement, right? It's right. It's true though. But they say it in the corporate world, and it would just be sometimes it'd just be a bit of flannel, right? But actually, if you talk about it in yourself, in your own heart and your own mind and your own thoughts, continual improvement is actually a really good thing to be committed to, isn't it? You know what I mean? So yeah, let's look at some, because we've been on here for an hour and 12 minutes. Wow, that's amazing. Doesn't time fly when you're having fun with the In-Betweeners posse, yeah? with the top colour blue team. So as far as the remix opportunities go, I like to put these at the end of every chapter, because I do think that they are something that I've learned from each individual chapter. Like the end of the first one, for instance, last week was. Which is one of my sort of staples now, that I said and someone went, oh, that's good. And I went, all right, I'll keep that one. When you understand the power of a negative thought, you'll never have another one, or you'll never allow another one to stay for very long. And I think that's one of the things, don't allow a negative thought. I mean, observe it. If it comes up, a negative thought, a negative emotion, observe it, but don't allow it to stick around for very long. Replace it with something new and get moving on the next thing, And I can see you all agreeing on that. It's so easy that I meet so many people, particularly coaching clients, particularly people that come into my world and want to be coached and grow. They spend so long like lingering on stuff that it really could just let's get moving. And I think we've all done it, right? And particularly you guys as top colour blues and empathizers, I would say that you've probably all done it more than most. Would that be?
Yeah.
Doing
Yeah,
it
I think
for
that's
years.
yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Yeah, I think it's but then when if I'm really critical about myself, am I sort of not letting things go because it's an excuse not to do something that scares me, or it's an excuse not to do something because, you know, for whatever reason, now I can't do this because of X, or it shouldn't define you. It shouldn't define who you are just because, you know, you're worried about something. You've said nothing.
You can have results or excuses, right? We can't have both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I cut you off. You said something about did I cut you off there? Were you going to say something?
I can't remember what I was going to say now, Mark.
Right,
You've ruined it for everybody now.
Sorry, I interrupted. Colour yellow, interrupted it. Sorry.
There was probably some sort of amazing quote about to come out of my mouth, and you've just
when it comes back, when it comes back, just blurt it out. Don't be,
will do.
You know, just when it comes back, something that obviously that I'd said that resonated with you. But yeah, look. So the thing here is yeah, what's the story? You know, are you blaming yourself or someone else, or are you taking responsibility for your own results? Yes, that's quite a tough question to ask yourself. Would you agree?
I think for many years, without the awareness, we'd look at past situations, especially being blues, you know, analyze them and always, you know, I mean, for me in particular, I could never. There was always a blame, or if it had gone like that, it wouldn't happen like this and this and that, you know. And again, it's only sort of recently, over the last year or two, that I'm, you know, starting to let things like that go, because they just serve no purpose now. And it's
the story, isn't it? It's the story that
you know,
the story that you're holding on to, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that story doesn't, you know, it's just, so what? You know, it's, I think it's a great bit in The Secret with Jack Canfield. He's like, so you know, that's all, so what? And then it's like, well, what? So, you know, what we're gonna do, you know, with where we are now and the skills we've got right now, what are we going to do going forward? And that's the bit I love to encourage people with, because you know, like I said this before, but you're all completely unique. There's not another Matt, there's not another Wayne, there's not another Gary. Do you know what I mean? You're utterly unique out of billions of people on the planet, you know. So why would you think that you can't do something, or you can't like step out of a comfort zone and do something because there's not another you? You know, and it's a nice way to live that. But Gary, what do you think about you know, that sort of taking responsibility piece?
I think from where I've been at 6 months ago, before we started getting right into that, I think now the taking responsibility gives you the platform to move forward. Like, otherwise, anything else means that you're lingering on it. You're telling yourself lies. When you take responsibility, part of what we were discussing before about being able to remove a negative thought very quickly, when you take responsibility, that gives you the capability to be able to quickly understand what's happened there, make a decision, and use it as a platform to move forward. And that's how I look at it every single time. I just work through that process in my head, and pleased to say that now that's gone from probably being days to work through that to now being hours, if not minutes, depending on what the thing is, and being able to just snappily, you know, we always talk about decisiveness, Mark, and being top color blue, but it's something that definitely is getting better as a result of that.
It's something you can learn.
It's the training the brain right like a muscle, right, so that you can.
And Gary, I will say, I say this as well, of you know, I've said this to you before on coaching calls, but of many coaching clients, you've grasped this very, very quickly, you know, and you get it, and you're kind of like, yeah, okay, right. So what do I do, and how do I do it? Right, boom, 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 boom. You know, so you know, yes, there's still some decisiveness sort of stuff there, but just the fact that you're just like, oh, okay, right. So if I do that and that and that, and you've sort of worked it out in your mind, in your brain, I was going to say, but in your mind, you've worked it out, and then you just put it into practice. You've seen that it works, and you go, oh, okay, yeah, fair enough.
I think just adding to what you're saying there, and to something that Wayne touched on earlier when he was saying about, you know, the way the book is easy to read, actually with the coaching side of thing that this book is complementing, and vice versa. This, when you actually commit to understanding it, and you sort of dig a little deeper than the surface of it, it is real simple techniques, really simple techniques that anyone can grasp and start to work on. It's not some massive complicated thing that you need to be really smart to understand. It's not that at all, and that's what amazes me about the laws of the universe, the law of attraction, is that it's just so simple and straightforward to be able to apply it if you just commit to it and you continue to educate yourself for it. And that, as Wayne was saying, is kind of the foundation and feeling throughout the whole of the book. So
thank you, Gary, and that's a great observation. There's a great bit in The Secret that says what you resist persists, right? So the amount of, like, if someone's resisting simple enough basic instructions that I've followed that have been taught to me, and I've gone, here you go, you just, here's my way of doing it, and I'll share it with you. But there's so much resistance in the world. People are like, resist, and it persists. It keeps coming back and keeps coming back and keeps coming back, and they don't understand why. And they're like, no, I don't want it, and it keeps coming back. And actually, if you just go,
well, there's a great quote from The Slight Edge that says, the techniques, they're easy to do, but they're just as easy not to do. And it's, the slight edge is doing it.
Yeah. It's breaking habits, isn't it, Mark?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. You get these habits that are put into you from a very young age. Subconsciously, they take root, and you think that's the way to live. We were all taught. I know for a fact we were all taught, the in-betweeners, the four of us, all dotted around London. Every single one of us was taught, go to school, work hard, get your head down, get some exams, go and get a job, get out to work, earn some money, look after your family. That's just like, it's just like a group habit. It's just been taught to just about all of us. Do you know what I mean? And essentially, if you look at someone like Richard Branson, for instance, his parents didn't teach him that at all. His parents said, get out there, get on with it, do this, do that, do X, Y, Z. And he's become this like huge millionaire. And he's not the only one. There's loads of others, but en masse, there's a great quote that basically says, if you're doing what everyone's doing, you're probably doing it wrong. You know what I mean? You probably need to go the opposite direction.
Yeah, but I think there's an element of that, Mark. It's human nature. We all want to live in a tribe and be harmonious and not upset the apple cart. And it's kind of almost like the chimp's paradox. If you've ever, you must have seen that. All you want to do is make sure that you fit in with the group, because the group keeps you safe. And if you're in the safe group, then you're all right. Whereas I think it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing now, and Gary, what you're doing, to sort of step out of your comfort zones. I remember when you started on this journey, Mark. When you were trying to sort of give ideas to the corporate world, and they weren't quite open to it, were they? No. The QR code was a good one. If you do you remember that one?
I would have loved to have brought e-colours into Heathrow. That would have been a beauty. Because imagine
held a mirror up, wouldn't it?
It would have. Everyone would have just been like, oh. Do you know what I mean? And everyone, anyone that got that would be able to work differently in the environment. And listen, I'm rolling e-colours out, not just to people I know and friends and family and all of you guys and everyone else, but it's going out into corporate companies. It's going out into other places, and we will be coaching it. We're looking to coach it in schools. We're talking to so many people at the moment about how we're going to utilise e-colours in the UK, because it's a powerful tool. And it's got great energy behind it. And you guys have all nodding, but you guys have all seen the result just for yourself, let alone in your own companies and out there in the world and stuff like that. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities using e-colours going into companies, particularly as we grow and go forward over the next 10 years, in my humble opinion. But look, let's keep it back on track. Obviously I asked a couple of questions here that I don't think we need to answer right now, but, what's your relationship like with your parents, and, what's going on in there, in detail, because you need to analyze that and understand the impact that they may have had. And also, if you're not, if you can't forgive them for how they were, around you, ask them what their childhood was like, and you'll find a few interesting things that you never knew about your parents' childhoods. And then it carries on from there, and it becomes very, very interesting little journey. Have you left home emotionally? I think that's a brilliant question. I got asked that by a therapist, actually. Have you left home emotionally? And I was like, what are you talking? No, actually, what he said was, have you left home? I went, of course I left home. I live in a flat around the corner. What are you talking about? And he said, no. He said, have you left home emotionally? And I went, I don't know. But I did spend a lot of time thinking about what my mum and dad did, and what my mum thinks about this now and this guy. And I hadn't left home emotionally, and I was like 35 or something, and I was like, well, hold on a minute, it doesn't matter what my mum and dad. Well, my dad had died, but doesn't matter what my mum thinks right now. This is my life, you know what I mean? I've got to get on with it. But my therapist at the time, he actually said, that he gets people coming into his into his practice. I was going to say surgery, into his practice, who are like 60 and still worrying about what their mum and dad would think. you have to go like, no, you need to, and that's what coaching is about. Coaching is about like, cut those ties, let's get moving and let's get you going. This is your life. You only got one life and one opportunity, so you need to go for it. So yeah, do you still spend time thinking about your parents' opinions? I think it's a really important question. Here's a good one. Are you thinking and deciding everything for yourself, or are you being influenced by everyone else around you?
Yeah.
Think about that question very carefully before you answer it, chaps. Yeah, right. I know. There's lots of people listening that will be related to you and that as well. So it's an interesting.
I think when I'm making decisions, I'm not just thinking about how those decisions will impact on my own life.
Okay.
I think when I'm making decisions, it's okay. How is it going to affect? Firstly my children, and then obviously my wife, because I suppose that inbuilt thing into me is to want to protect them. Going back to my upbringing, really, is to want to make sure that they've got that roof over their head.
There's nothing.
Of course not.
Yeah, that's right.
But at the same time, it's that fine balance of where do you.
Yeah.
To keep them safe, where do you then sacrifice your own goals and your own dreams and your own aspirations? And I think
do you have to know? Do you think you have to?
I'm learning you don't, Mark. I'm learning you don't. I think initially it was that almost that feeling of, well, I can't do that. I need to have that. I need to be an employee. I need to be working in the corporate world because that's safe. And you've got not a job for life, but you'll always go from one job to another. The last 12 months, particularly in the industry that we worked in, has proven the complete opposite.
Well, aviation. I thought aviation was recession-proof.
Was recession-proof? It was. Yeah.
And then clearly has not been COVID-proof. But the other thing about that is that, I don't think you have to sacrifice yourself for your family. In fact, if anyone is doing that, it's actually a mistake. It's actually a mistake because you're not actually doing your family any favors by being a martyr, for instance. And I'm not talking about you, Matt. I'm just talking about people in general. Even if you, there's something in the way of the superior man, which Wayne and Gary, I know you guys have read extensively already. But he says, even if you're in that sort of corporate position and you don't like it and you're not feeling good about it and it's not you, sick of it. So this was where I was basically probably in the last few years after I left Heathrow, Matt, and went to the other company and everything else. I was in this place. I was like, I'm not appreciated here, and this is not really working for me. So what I did was I took some instructions from the way of the superior man, and I took at least 1 hour a day to do exactly what it was that I would like to do. And I also set goals about the perfect day, the perfect year, and I worked towards them. So although I was doing the corporate job and I was giving my best, and I was doing 8, 10, 12 hours a day sometimes, I still knew that, I knew where I was going. I knew where I was going to end up. And so, I'm married, no children, of course, but, I still got responsibilities to, my wife and my mum and brother and stuff like that. But I knew that I didn't have to sacrifice myself. I knew that I could follow my dreams and still impact, positively in all my family. And I think that's a mindset shift that many employees have to look at and actually go, I don't have to do this thing that doesn't fulfill me for 8 or 10 hours a day just for a few quid. If I come up with another plan.
But that means stepping outside a comfort zone and a lot of people are not ready or prepared to do that.
It takes time. It took me about 12 to 15 months to actually prepare myself mentally and financially and everything else to make that leap.
I can completely resonate with you because I was running my own business and I was sort of I was pretty unhappy for a long time, and it took me probably longer than that to get to the point. First thing I had to do was emotionally detach myself from the business, which was it took a lot of time to do that. But eventually, I just realised that I had to make that step because it wasn't serving me.
Well, your happiness depends upon it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
as well.
yeah. I know, Gary, we talk a lot, of course, as well, and I know you're, happy in your corporate job and it's all going well. So, that's important. But I think it's also really important to understand about growth and goal setting, and live your own life on your own terms. You agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think happy at the moment, because I know what my corporate job is serving for me at the moment. But in the future, yeah, absolutely, that kind of entrepreneurial mindset. But yeah, we're always discussing growth and the different things that that need to consider to be able to move away from that kind of.
Also, Gary, sorry I was interrupting, but also the offerings that the things we talk about, that even the things you can do right here, right now, like mental health first aider. Obviously you've got such a nice warm way about you. That's something you can offer immediately in the corporate setting that you're in right now, and actually offer that. And I know, Matt, you've done that as well, haven't you? Mental health first courses and stuff like that. It's just something that you can bring to the table in that corporate environment straight away that has a real benefit to people.
Absolutely, and I think they're the types of opportunities that I now sort of recognise that are presenting themselves, sort of taking me in the direction that I know that I want to move into now. As I said, the corporate job's serving a purpose at the moment, and there's opportunities, and I've still got growth in that area that I need to go through before the next stage of my life that we're preparing for now. I'm preparing for now, and you're coaching me onto. I think going back to the part in the book about the taking the responsibility or the decision making, and the influencing by everyone else. I think that's a huge part, especially being a top colour blue, of wanting the decision to be right for everyone, when actually what I've learned and what I'm working on is knowing that actually the best decisions and the right decisions actually don't make everyone happy every time. And going by what you said there as well, even the people closest to you, the decision might not necessarily make them happy at that point in time. But
there's a great quote, isn't there? There's a great quote, and I've got to try and remember it now. And it's something like I don't know. It's someone else saying it. It says, "I don't know how to be successful, but I know the way to fail. Try and keep everyone happy."
Yeah.
It's never going to work. You're never going to be able to keep everyone happy. You know what I mean? It's just like, other people will adjust to you, particularly when we talk about masculine and feminine, and obviously we're all, men on this call. I didn't do that deliberately, but it is quite fun that we're talking about this In-Betweeners chapter. We're all lads together. I'll get some more women back for next week, I think. But it's really beautiful that you're all here. But the point is that I think that that masculine part of us is about decisiveness. And once you've made a decision and you've got purpose, and I talk a lot about purpose and defining what your purpose actually is, and you make up your own minds on that, what your purpose is. I know what mine is. But once you've defined your purpose and you make that decision and you decide to go for it, you'll find that other people will support you. Even the ones that might not agree with you 100% or are not sure about it, or are a bit like, oh God, if you want my advice, don't do it, or better safe than sorry, all that kind of stuff. You'll have all that noise that goes on around you. But if you keep driving and you're like, yep, I know where I'm going, I know what I'm doing, this is important, this is my mission, this is my purpose, this is my decision. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to keep committing. I'm not going to allow the doubts and fears and worries in my own mind and the rest of society and everything else, but I'm just going to keep focusing on it. You'll find eventually that the rest of the world will sort of, dare I say, bow to your willpower. Your willpower will come through, and other people will see it and go, okay, I can believe in this, and I can believe in this guy, and I can believe, and your closest, your nearest, your dearest, your family, your wife, your kids, and everything else, they will eventually go, okay, so I can see what they're doing, and I like it, and that's the value that you can bring to it.
I think the biggest thing I've sort of learned as I've got older is that, and I don't know if it's a quote, because if it's not, I'm claiming it, but it's opinions aren't
2021.
Can someone put the inverted? The opinions aren't facts. You take the ones in that you like, but just go with the ones you don't, and just go with it, because ultimately, opinions are based on purely just what
Well, I've got another one for you. It's a bit ruder.
Is it as good as that one?
It's good. I do like it, and you can have it, and you can claim it, and you can put the speech mark on it. But
Thanks,
opinions are like, everyone's got one.
Yes.
Yeah? Everyone's got one. I promise you, everyone's got an opinion about something.
And how did I know you was going to say that?
Because he's known a lot of arseholes. That's why.
Yeah. Opinions are like, everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's got an opinion, okay? And that's the free world that we live in, and that's okay. And but we don't have to take it all in. We can, our strength as human beings, masculine, feminine, whichever we are, our strength as human beings is our mission. And keep going forwards. Don't listen. The women or the men that have built great things in the world never listen to the naysayers going like, yeah, watch out, that kind of stuff. So I think better safe than sorry is actually a phrase that has probably been used many times in a caring way. But actually, if you internalize that too much, what you got to be sorry about? Just go for it. Just get on with it.
But then you can probably find that the best leaders are the ones that listen to the opinions of others and can filter through the crap and actually take the best ones or learn from the bad ones.
Anyway, yeah. Thank you.
Talking of quotes, what about the old chestnut? He who dares.
He who dares wins, Rodders. Yeah, I like that, Wayne. Well done for bringing a bit of Only Fools and Horses to the discussion. I like that. Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of great story. There's a lot of great stories in Only Fools and Horses. There's a lot of great humour. Of course, it's amazing. But just the fact, Del Boy's always like, never stop believing. He who dares wins. Go, and eventually he makes it. And that's the beauty of the story. All right, it's a fluke and blah blah. But the moral of the story is actually that if you keep trying, you keep going, you might think you've got it, and all of a sudden that goes out the window. But you don't give up, and you persist and persist and persist. Eventually, something will go your way, even if it's a very, very comfortable retirement with your golf clubs in a nice place, and you've got all the money you need, and it's all great. Or you strike gold, and you've set the other book that sells 1 million copies, or whatever it is, right? But whatever it is for you, and it feels good to you, then that's your like holy grail, if you like. That's your thing. And so I don't like to in the coaching. I've pushed people outside their comfort zone, but only as far as they are happy to go. I don't want to make people so uncomfortable that they're overstretching and they're putting themselves or their family at risk or anything like that. It's nothing like that, but it is about pushing people a little bit, nudging them a bit, going, come on, being that little voice in their ear saying, you can do it. Don't think that you can't. And I think that's so important. And
yeah, definitely.
Look, chaps, it's been beautiful. Let me just finish with this last point here while we sort of wind it up. Let's just get your comments on this and what you think. To live your dream life, as I started to in chapter 2, because it was my dream life of music and DJing and partying and traveling around the globe. It was what I wanted. Clearly, that's how I attracted it to me. But in order to live your dream life fully, 100%, you must commit. Absolutely, without doubt, you must commit. What do you think?
100% agree.
Yeah,
you have to, don't you? You have to. If you try and do anything a bit half-arsed, whatever the word is, but if you do something but you're not really committed, and you're kind of and within yourself, don't you? Whether you're fully committed to something or whether you're a bit like.
I think you say that if you want to be successful, you need to add value and give good service. And if you're not fully committed, you can't give your best of either of those, can you?
Absolutely not. That's right, and that's the way you earn money. You add value, you give service, you make money, and it comes back to you in waves. And it's a beautiful thing to do, and it's a great thing to do for yourselves and for other people. And there's a lot of people that are coasting through life. I think one of the quotes I used in the 5 days course recently was many people are tiptoeing through life, hoping to get safely to death. I think you enjoyed that one, Gary.
Yeah, no, that one. And I think what you just said, to be honest with you, takes us right back to the quote that you said at the beginning about strange, how the best moments of our lives we scarcely notice except when looking back. Actually, what you just said there is one of the things that you need to do to commit in order so that you don't miss those moments. I think those two go hand in hand. So yeah, it's so true.
And so we've got a few more comments just coming in towards the end here. Diana saying forgiveness is very freeing. Yes, Absolutely it is. Forgive yourself and everyone, everything right here, right now. Don't waste another second. I heard a great quote about, I think it comes from Buddhism, where they're talking about anger. If you're angry about something that's gone on, even if it's subconsciously, if you're angry, it's like holding onto a hot piece of coal and hoping that it burns someone else. It doesn't work. So put it down as quickly as you can. Like, get rid of it. Pete's got a message, says this time next year, Wilkie. Yes, you know it, mate. You know it. And Kevin Canada just says, such a great night. Cheers, boys. So that's really cool. So thanks to Kevin and all of you guys for watching us. Chaps, if you want to share this with any of your friends, it's across YouTube and all my socials and everything else. Unless you've got anything else to add, I just want to say thank you all so much for being here this evening. I've really enjoyed your company. Top Colour Blues, all of you.
Thanks for having us.
No, thank you very much. It was good.
No,
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
Stay right where you are, chaps. I'll just end the broadcast and say thanks very much to everyone. I really do appreciate you watching this evening. I hope you got loads of value out of it. If you're reading Life Remixed, please do leave a review on Amazon. As I've said, that's the oxygen that keeps the book going. And of course, big love to all of the lads. We'll be back next Tuesday for another book club, and I'll be inviting some more special guests on. So apart from that, it's good night from me. And it's good night from the rest of the in-between. So, thank you very much. Nice one.